The whole story.
Welcome back. Thank you for staying with Inside Politics. The conversation during the break was as exciting as what we had during the show right here. So let's shift focus right now to matters IEBC. And right before the break, I hinted about some of the changes ever since President William Ruto signed into law that particular bill touching on IEBC. It started that rigorous process of appointing new commissioners, and it will be instrumental in ending the plight of voters in Barisa constituency and several wards that have had to go without a representative for quite some time. Some of the new changes in terms of that law: the vice chair will not automatically become the chairperson whenever a vacancy occurs. Equally, IBC commissioners must have 10 years experience in their areas of study, with IT as one of the key fields. And equally, the chairperson of the commission shall be the person who is qualified to hold the office of Judge of the Supreme Court. Some of the new laws under that particular act. So, Dr. Koki, this is your forte, and I'll start with you. And I'll first start with highlighting some of the boxes we have not ticked. Delimitation of boundaries should have been concluded by now. IEBC is cash-strapped. We don't have commissioners. There are constituencies and wards that don't have representatives as well. Funding of delimitation of boundaries has been sort of hampered in one way or the other since recently, due to the dropping of the Finance Act. IEBC is one of those institutions that got a budget cut in one way or the other. So it seems there's an insurmountable task ahead of the commissioners and the team that will be coming to take over. They need to hit the ground running. How do you look at it in terms of the in-tray and the out-tray that Kenyans are expecting? Yeah.
Thank you very much. Before I go into the in and out tray, which you must remind me if I forget, I would like to just give a context of how this is happening. As I mentioned, this bill is part of the NADCO report, 9 bills, and it's the only one that has gotten to the level where it's been assented to. If you recall, this bill was actually approved by the National Assembly on 20th of June. And after the 4th of July, 14 days expired, which means under Article 115, subsection 6 of the Constitution, that bill became automatically law on the 5th of July. Now, the President signed it, assented to it in a very dramatic meeting in KICC on Tuesday, a few days after it actually became law. Yes. So that was like a just endorsement.
Formality.
Sadly, that law has not been gazetted to make it come into force, because all legislation that has been ascended to or has become law by a fluxion of time must actually be gazetted for them to take force in law. So that space, and it was Tuesday, now it's more than a week, I think, almost a week.
Almost, yeah.
Therefore, so it should have been immediately gazetted, or at least by Friday last week, so that then it can kick off the process of constituting the IEBC selection panel. Now, the next step, therefore, would be now identifying, and you know, and I come back to the, not the in-trays, but the items you mentioned about the amendments. Number one, it actually did a fundamentally important thing by expanding the composition of the IEBC selection panel to include different key players in the process. And you will see that it also actually has recognized, this amendment recognizes from the NADCO report all the way, the importance role of political parties. And political parties are constituted by, within the political parties liaison committee, which is a creation of statute, the Political Parties Act. And the political parties liaison committee, the office of the registrar of political parties and the IEBC are supposed to be the sort of the troika that manages the political enterprise of this country. And therefore, they have strength and powers that are similar and responsibilities, because all political parties are the ones that create a forum for political dialogue in Kenya. And that means that their voice, their engagement is critical. Now, having said that, the political parties framework was actually recognized and given 3 slots. And then you have ISPAC was included. Okay. And then, in fact, even the Act itself says that it has expanded the expertise that is required to include ICT and also to include accounting, which is, these are all fundamental to the other existing expertise and qualifications of IEBC. IEBC. So it's been expanded from 7 to 9. Okay. But another thing that this Act has done, which is very important, is to require that after every election, there is an audit or a review of the entire electoral process and the entire electoral cycle to determine the gaps and what we have done better, what we can do to improve in order to make the business of managing elections in Kenya more efficient, more responsive, and also to ensure it is more sustainable. Right. And therefore, when you look, as you said, of the in-trays, it is indeed true that, and also the Amendment Act actually has replaced the entire Schedule 5, which deals with the delimitation of electoral boundaries and included new things. And we are cognizant of the fact that the review of electoral boundaries needs to be done within the framework that you mentioned, the time frame, but also before the elections, way before, I think almost a year before the elections itself, so that then those boundaries can take effect. Right. And so we are against time. And immediately after the review of electoral boundaries and wards and so on, it will become necessary to actually revise the electoral register. Because if you move the boundaries in wards and constituencies, it means you have moved certain voters to different places and so on. So there will be review of the boundaries, there will be registration of voters, and the cleaning of the voters register, there will be civic education, there will be all sorts of things. The electoral cycle is big and there is no time actually, and they need money. So that's a big issue to be addressed. So
time-strapped, cash-strapped as well. Well, it seems the cards are against the IEBC even before it's constituted fully. Let's listen in from Kipto briefly, because the elephant in the room when it comes to IEBC is the trust deficiency. How exactly do we address this at this particular stage? Because the multiple effect is expensive elections. We've had that time and time again. And perhaps in an extreme case, anarchy, God forbid, a certain scenario such as the 2007 election. How do we solve a problem in counting votes for a country that seems to be so forward in terms of other issues, but when it comes to counting votes, we still have an issue? How do we take care of the trust deficiency? Briefly, Kipto, in 2 minutes or so.
Thank you so much. I think for IEBC, Dr. Koki has clearly elucidated what the new legislation has offered. On the issue of trust deficiency, it is more or less the politics around the leadership. One, if you see the Act trying to broaden the selection panel and trying to ensure that it is all inclusive in form of having the professional entities, but importantly, the major clients to IEBC is basically politicians, and they have somehow brought back what had previously been done through the IPPG in 1997, where the political parties have more or less a say in the selection. Hopefully, that can be used to inject confidence so that whoever is selected, a political party or major political parties can have a sense of ownership and say, yes, we chose these ones. And the leadership, the politics around leadership played itself out clearly during the 2022 elections, where you find a section of the commissioners took side with Azimio, then you have the chair and 2 others taking the side of Kenya Kwanza, and that is one thing that needs to be avoided. It is always a political duel and a contest. Number 2, we need to use facts. And I think when Dr. Koki spoke about an audit, if you look at the audit of the last elections, at least we need to give credit where it is due. If there's one measure of audit as to whether the elections were better carried out compared to previous years, you look at the record of IEBC when it comes to petitions before the court, right from the MC elections up to the presidential. If you look at the rate of success of the petitions, it has been significantly low, that 95% of the cases IEBC has come out on top, which shows that the process went better and well compared to the previous one. And that for me goes a long way in just increasing the trust and confidence to the institution by the public. And I want to credit one aspect, which I think it comes from the previous petitions that went to court, especially the presidential petition. Every time the presidential petition has landed in the Supreme Court, one or two legislative recommendations have ended up coming in and affecting IEBC's operation. One of them is the finding by the court, I think after 2017, that the final results are what are pasted and read out at the polling station, that you don't have to wait for the chair to declare the results at Bomas for you to authenticate. Basically, that's just official declaration. The main result is at the polling station. And I feel that made a significant difference in 2022, so that a candidate, whether from MCA to the president, could easily be able to declare and know that the outcome is as is. So that what the commission does at the national level is to confirm what has already been validated at the polling station level. For me, that goes a long way in bringing confidence to the process. So I feel when it comes to the confidence on leadership, that is more or less perception. So if the selection panel can do a good job, and I want to take this moment maybe to urge the new selection panel that will be born out of this new act to read the mood of the country. Competence is key. And it must be seen that whoever is chosen to be chair or the commissioner must meet the threshold of public confidence. That's when you will find the confidence also flowing to the organization.
All right, Kipto.
Lastly, more importantly, it is important for IEBC also as an institution to do serious communication and messaging post. That's why at this point, they should be out there communicating the very limited time they have. I'm really worried that it may be too late for us to do boundary delimitation. The politics is here with us. With the current crisis, it will be very difficult. It will be very emotive. It would be better then for IEBC to come out clearly and give recommendations.
All right. Okay, Kipto, thanks for that. We have to get the sentiments of our other panelists because we are time strapped as well, similar to IEBC. Anyway, as we finalize.
Yes, maybe very quickly.
Yes.
Whenever Kenyans hear of review, they think of more constituencies and more ward. But that discussion should be in relation to what the Gen Z are saying, that our governance is too expensive. This constitution, the audit have shown that is too expensive to roll out as it is. So here we have people who are waiting for more constituencies and more wards, and you know what that means. It comes with more money, and therefore I think it is important for that new IEBC to have a genuine conversation, and for Kenyans to, whether the word dialogue is not a good word, but chat about it. Is that better? Chat about how many constituencies they might want. Finally, that Kenya is a multi-party democracy. And, election is like the mother's milk for democracy. We don't have any other governance apart from democracy. It's not the best, but it's the one that has been tested. And through that, the election became very important. Finally, that audit of IEBC, who should do it? Is it IEBC who should do it? I think NADCO felt that we need other bodies which should do the audit and not IEBC doing their own audit after they are done.
Interesting. Koki, final say, briefly.
Very briefly.
Yes.
3 small points to address your
Trust deficit.
Trust deficit.
Yes.
1, the political parties are the key players in the elections, any elections. Yeah. And they have to be allowed and participate and they're actually allowed within this Amendment Act because they have 3 representatives. Through these 3 representatives, they will play a key role in identifying competent IEBC commissioners who will then function within the law, the constitution and the law that creates them. And that will give us results or outcomes that the political parties will have no choice but to legitimately accept as the final result. And therefore, when we are able to actually put in place a competent, and that's what Gen Zs want, and that's what even the president said when he was signing the law, that we are going to focus on competencies, credentials.
Simple. All right.
Simple.
All right.
And the law.
Okay, so interesting. I mean, when you have a good time, time flies. So thank you so much for giving us your input right here on Inside Politics. We're joined by Dr. Duncan Ojwang, an international law expert, equally joined by Ambassador Dr. Koki Muli, a governance and elections expert with a PhD in elections. It's her forte. And equally joined virtually by Joshua Kipto, who's a former Nandi speaker and an advocate of the High Court. Kipto, we appreciate your input equally. Asante sana for making time. Gentlemen and lady, thank you so much for adding value. And I hope back at home you've adequately been informed. My name is Jesse Rogers. Enjoy the rest of your viewing.